Hey friend, now in my last video we talked about learning your genre. How do you figure out where the story fits? However, learning the genre is not enough. We have to figure out how the story wants to be told. So whether that is a novel in verse, is it an anthology or collection of short stories, is it a graphic novel? All of these questions we have. What form should my story take? So this video is actually designed to help you understand all the different forms that your story or stories can take and the ways that you can just cut through the fluff and get to a decision right away. For those of you who are new here, my name is K.E. Lewis. I am award-winning children's author of the books Never Take Your Writer on a Plane, which is right above me here, and also Because of Dads. Go ahead and get you a copy. This one is fresh off the shelf. It came out about 3 weeks ago. But this video is going to help answer the questions and break down some of just the confusions that you have about the different ways that you could tell a story. Okay, we're going to dive in. So right away, let's get this off the bat. We are going to talk about anthologies. So anthologies are, of course, a collection of either stories or poems that could be either written by one person or written by multiple people. So, for example, this is not a small boys book. These poems were selected by an author, Tracy Todd. But in this collection, these are multiple authors telling different stories. So if you are thinking about having multiple people contribute to this thing that you have brewing, say you all want to focus on happiness and you write a bunch of poems or short stories about happiness, just like Black Boy Joy, you would actually partner with other writers. One of you would lead the project in speaking with the editor, and you all will work together to create a collection. Or in this case of Little Leaders by Vashti Harrison, who is one person, and she used the collection to unpack powerful and historical Black women across decades. That's another way that you can tell a story through way of an anthology. If you're just one person and you want to focus on multiple subjects, multiple people at once, and you want each page to have a different feel, or each page has a different feel, or even in your collection of short stories, all the stories are very different, but they're tied together through a theme. An anthology or a collection of stories is the way to go. The second piece, before we even get into the narrative form of it, is the reference books. So reference books, think encyclopedias, think dictionaries, think informational text that you go to specifically for information, and it reads sometimes like a textbook. So consider a book like this, where it's 1,000 amazing weird facts. Reference in that, you can open it up, and we see this page here, migration, marathon migration. It's a journey that would have most of us reaching for our passports, but monarch butterflies cover 3,000 miles. So whenever you open this is explicitly teaching. Whenever you are thinking about a reference book, so if there are like some neat facts that you want kids to know, and you want to approach it in a very like collage-y way, this would be the thing for you. The great thing about this lane is that you could either do like a really like just informational book, or you could do what's called a hybrid. And so look at this almanac here. So whenever you think about hybrid books, they have information in there, but information is not always presented in a way that is didactic or as teaching is on the nose. You might have some clips in here, some fun facts, some myth-busting facts. There might be little activities where kids can learn. There may even be narratives woven in between. So this is for those who are looking to tell a story about different objects. This would probably be the form for you, especially if you wanted to spruce it up and include the informational text along with narrative, poetry, things of that nature. So those are the two examples in the area of my reference books here. And I know that you all clicked on this video to talk about narrative, so let's get into it. Remember last video we went and we talked about narrative, so we talked about spaces from board books through YA. The thing about board books and early readers, they are pretty much set with the exception of one form that I'm going to talk about here. But your board books, again, not much room for experimentation. Alphabets and numbers, all the things that are elemental and foundational for a child to understand and to build their stamina and their comprehension of reading as they go to the next level. So let's actually start with picture books and the things that you could do with picture books in the way that you could tell your story. So let's start with the traditional narrative. It fell from the sky. So if you are thinking about writing a story from front to back, you have these characters that you want to center. You can very well do that. But there are some things that you need to ask yourself before you choose the traditional narrative. How can I tell this story in a different way that hadn't been told before? Why? Because traditional narratives are already on the shelf. Like, there's a lot of traditional narratives on the shelf. Not to say that you shouldn't write traditional narrative, but each story deserves its own treatment. And I think that you should actually take the time to explore and discover how that story needs to be told. So, for example, in the narrative space, in the picture book space, if you are, not thinking about narrative where you have your main character, you have your insight and incident, and there are, of course, 3 momentum builders that lead up to a climax and exposition. If you don't want to tell that story in the way or the traditional narrative, there are other ways that you can tell that story. One being a concept book. So I am going to do something that I haven't done in the last couple videos, and that is talk about a book that I wrote. So because of that, there is what they call an arc. So you get to see the beginning, middle, and end, but because of that is what they call a concept book, a lyrical concept book at that. Lyrical books, because it is written in a way that flows like a poem. Lyrical does not mean rhyme, by the way. They can be interchangeable depending on the text that you're talking about. But in this case, there are poetic elements. There is simile and assonance, repetition, onomatopoeia, that sort of thing. And it is a concept because it's breaking down this idea of dads. There is not a character in here per se. There are many characters. It's a celebration of fathers and father figures. So that's what makes this a concept book, in that there is no real character. There's no inciting incident. There is no climax. There is no problem here. There is really no resolution. What carries us is the day, where we're going from the very top of the morning all the way through the night. And I do have a video coming up where I will break down concept books, and we'll get to talk about concept books in detail and how to unflesh and discover your own concept. All right, so outside of concept books, let's lean more heavily into the lyrical. So there are lyrical books, books that use poetry and that use the elements of poetry to carry a story. Those are your lyrical books. Lyricism tends to do really, really well if you are covering a hard topic, or you are covering a topic that's sentimental and you want people to sit up and pay attention. Poetry in lyrical books help to break down complex topics, help to make topics more accessible. So think about your use of simile and metaphor, extended metaphor in particular. They just make it easier for young readers to digest the story. They're also really good with the ear. So if you are considering a lyrical book, if your book is tackling a tough topic, or there is like a nighttime, bedtime lullaby, think about objects and things that are really good to the ear and that would sound really good out loud. Typically what I see on the shelf is books that are much about nature or mindfulness. They are more lyrical in nature because it fits the form. So you want to think about how can your idea help to shape a form that is true to the subject of your book. Hey, if you made it this far, that means you're serious about your craft and you're trying to understand the world of children's literature and how to break into kid lit. So you really should check out my resources at kelewis.world. Those resources will help you understand the industry, deepen your craft, and give you tools and tricks you'll find useful on your journey. If you are a teacher looking at this video, there are additional resources for you. See how I transform my books into engaging curriculum where you unpack the book and you get to explore literacy, math, science, and the arts. It's the perfect lesson plan for the day that you don't really feel like teaching, but also the ideal prep when preparing for a school visit. So run over to my site at kelewis.world and check out those resources. Now back to the conversation. It does rhyme. Rhyme is the vehicle for the story. And of course, a great example of a rhyming book would be Never Take Your Rhino on a Plane. You could take him on a ship, hail a taxi for the trip, waltz him gladly to the car or to the train, but absolutely never believe it's safe or clever to take your pet rhinoceros on a plane. It's the rhyme that's actually evident, and we get to see the rhyme and the words actually rhyme. If you are going to choose a rhyming book, typically what I've seen on the shelf is books that rhyme or books that are either going back to the lyricism piece, a lullaby, or a goodnight book. They are books that are fun, books that can be chaotic, like this one, because the rhyme helps to, in some cases, speed up the storytelling and make things unfold and chaotic as it unravels. So if your idea is one that is chaotic or that you think that kids will have fun with, rhyming may be the way to go. I would say it is the way to go, because sometimes we limit ourselves with rhyme. If your story sounds better or can be told without rhyme and it sounds better without rhyme, then don't feel like you need to rhyme. Children's books don't have to rhyme. That's one misconception of those who are not as familiar with children's books as, say, somebody who's been steeped in it for a while. And in fact, in most cases, it shouldn't. If you do, though, just know that it's torture, because this right here, it took me 4.5 years to get Rhino to the point that someone wanted to actually publish it. It's going back in the weeds, edit after edit after edit after edit after edit, because you got to get the meter and you have to get the rhyme right. So just a heads up, if you're going to choose a rhyming book, if your story is full of chaos or full of surprises and full of those moments that stand out and that will make a young reader perk up, rhyme might be the thing for you. Outside of that, in the picture book space, if you are considering a nonfiction book, you could write it like a traditional narrative, where we actually get to follow the subject or the person you're focusing on from cradle, the time that they are born, to grave, the time that they die. That is one way that you could do it. You could do a slice of life, which is just a point in their lives where they went from, say, childhood to that leap or that bridge or that moment where they became spectacular. So let's use MLK Jr. for instance. Whenever you're considering a picture book, nonfiction, you could either do a book from the time that he was born through his very last speech in Memphis, his mountaintop speech. That would be a cradle to grave. Or you can actually focus on MLK, the time leading up from when he got the call that he wanted to be the speaker at the March on Washington, through the actual delivery of his famous I Have a Dream speech, which is, a very short amount of time compared to the first option. So that is, one way if you're going to do traditional narrative. But I always encourage writers to not do what is expected of you. Actually let the subject guide the form of the book. Let it inspire something in you. So one of my favorite books is Balloons Over Broadway by Melissa Sweet. The thing about this book is that it is about Tony Sarge, who is marionette maker, and he has influenced what we know today as the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. The thing about the book, though, is that if you flip through the pages, you actually get to see marionettes. You get to see the messiness of a creative, because there are things that are very collage-like. You get to just see the creativity as it shines through and what a creative's mind might actually look like. I think the same thing applies to Carol Boston Weatherford's Andre story, her nonfiction about Andre Leon, who was a famous fashion model, and the story is told by way of a fashion magazine. This book here also is a good one because it is featuring black cowboys, but told Western style. And so the cowboys and cowgirls here actually influence the makeup of the book or the form that we decide to choose. So in the event that you are writing a nonfiction text, lean into what that person was into and actually create a story and choose a form that will unlock what we know of the person and actually draw us closer to that character. All right, so I think that's all I have for the picture book space. Let's move on to novels. And so this is going to be like a broad blanket of novels because it's going to apply to both middle grade and YA. So again, you can choose to create a regular novel if you want to. You can choose to be basic, and in some cases, it's good because it's tried and true. And sometimes that's the way the story needs to be told. So you could definitely choose your standard narrative, but what you want to think about before you actually make a decision about that standard narrative, you want to ask yourself, who do I want to be close to? Who do you want to be close to as you are writing this story? Whose thoughts and whose head you want to be in? Because a traditional narrative, as it is written, it only follows one voice. And whether that be a third-person omniscient character or a first-person character or third-person close, it only follows one voice throughout that entire novel. So the person's voice who's leading that story, that's how we're going to see the world. That's how we're going to experience the story. But what if I have this really fun character or an opposing character who I would like to hear from? So that opens up another opportunity for a multiple point of view or multi-POV novel, and thinking about how you can still feature your main character's voice, but also every other chapter or every few chapters switch up the actual point of view, and we get to live in somebody else's head for a while. And we get to see the world through their eyes. And we get to experience things through them. So that is an actual consideration. The second thing is, like, what are we trying to achieve? Ask yourself that. What are you trying to achieve in the novel that you are writing? Are you trying to just show us, are you just trying to show us this world and talk about this world through one person? Or are you trying to show us fragments of this world and pieces of this world? Because if you are trying to show us fragments and pieces and documents, if we are following a mystery novel or even a novel of deep suspense or a novel that is heartbreakingly beautiful, like Tears of a Tiger, which was one of my favorite novels when I was growing up, you want to think about choosing collage and actually having a novel that mixes up letters and traditional narratives, chapters written the the traditional way. You want to think about telling this story in a fragmented way, but through multiple voices, and actually making this experience more objective for your reader. If you want them to arrive at a conclusion on their own, if you want something to hit more heavy because they saw, say, a death certificate or even a birth certificate, feel more happy as a relief, those are ways that you can bring in those surprises for your reader. And you don't have to tell a story by way of a traditional narrative. So think about it as you are considering telling your story. And then the very last thing I have right now is the idea of the graphic novel. And graphic novels exist in the picture book space all the way through YA. So you have the picture book that is written like a graphic novel. There are also many graphic novels in the early reader space. One of my really favorite ones is Beak and Alley, which is the story between this alligator who is very chilled and doesn't want to be annoyed, and this bluebird who is super annoying. But it's told by way of a graphic novel or a comic book like. In the terms of a graphic novel, especially for middle grade, a graphic novel is more visual. They take a long time to produce, so just keep that in mind. But graphic novels, they are for your reluctant readers. I mean, people who are highly visual, they eat and eat and eat those up. If you want to tackle a story and we need to see your world and your character movements, and you want to actually give us frame by frame of what that story looks like, because that story will be more impactful frame by frame, graphic novel is your jam. That's the place that you should go. And graphic novels exist in, again, from that picture book space through YA. But let me circle back to the actual middle grade novel, lower middle grade, that is a novel that has sparse illustration, which is for your reluctant reader too in that space. Those are typically shorter novels. They really pack a punch. They also, if you think that you are delivering a story, especially for the younger reader, that they need some visual aid and visual help, or even if the humor will come through or the heart will come through a little more with sparse illustration, that is the way for you to tell your story. All right, so if you found this video helpful, I want you to go to the next video where we actually talk about the elements of a good book, particularly picture books. That video is right above. Click on that video. Please don't forget that there are free resources on my website. I'm just here to help you out, just a messenger. We can get our stories out there, strengthen our stories. Again, go to kelewis.world, and I'll see you in the next video.